Snap judgments. We all make them. We all consider ourselves to be amazing judges of character based on a quick glance or a brief introduction. We turn our judging eyes upon people we meet at a friend's birthday party or someone pushing a cart up the frozen food aisle at Publix or sitting near us in a restaurant or even kneeling in the next pew at church. And then based on how someone looks or what they're wearing, we immediately lump them into some predefined category. We assign them to a box of our own making, and then we move on with our day. Now, some of this judgment is just human nature. Categorizing those around us somehow affirms our own identity in the larger social fabric. But of course, there's a spiritual danger to all of this daily judging of others. We dehumanize and sort people into categories to our spiritual detriment. And while many of our snap judgments are subtle or seemingly harmless, they all have the consequence of separation, of separating us from them, separating people from their very humanity by defining them through a particular lens, of separating them from their primary identity as a fellow child of God, and then reducing others to superficial labels that may or may not be true. Which brings us to the so-called Gerasene demoniac in Luke's gospel. Oh, this man was judged by the people of his town. He was forced to live chained up in a graveyard, isolated from the community. He was separated, ostracized, and marginalized from society. To encounter this man undoubtedly evoked similar inner thoughts and judgments as occur when we pass someone holding up a sign asking for money at a busy intersection along Okeechobee Boulevard. And from the Jewish perspective, this man was the poster boy for being ritually unclean. He was a foreigner, he was demon-possessed, he was naked, he lived among the dead. From both a Gentile perspective, which is what he was and where he lived, and a Jewish perspective, which is the world inhabited by Jesus and his disciples, he couldn't have been further removed from the mainstream. He couldn't have been further set apart. He is the other among others. He is the uber other. And he is the very first person Jesus encounters when he steps off the boat into Gentile territory after crossing over the Sea of Galilee. Now, just as a side note, whenever water is crossed in the Bible, or whenever someone passes through water, that's like a big flashing red neon sign saying, "This is important. Pay attention." We see this at the story of creation in Genesis when God separates the waters. At the great flood where Noah built his ark and the covenant is established between God and God's people. At Moses parting the Red Sea as the Israelites are led from slavery into freedom. At Jesus' baptism, when he bursts through the water and the Holy Spirit descends upon him, setting his ministry into motion. And here, in this story, when Jesus crosses the Sea of Galilee, moving from Jewish territory to the land of the Gentiles to expand his mission and magnify his message. So we're prepared for a major event when Jesus steps off the boat and immediately encounters this loud and larger-than-life demon-possessed man, this human train wreck of suffering and torment. And you know what Jesus doesn't do? He doesn't make a snap judgment. He doesn't flinch. He doesn't run. He doesn't dismiss the man. Rather, he engages him. He asks a question. He listens. He heals. He sees past the external, past the superficial, and gazes upon the man's inherent humanity as someone made in the image of God. He doesn't avert his eyes or brush past him in order to get on with his mission, because this man is his mission. Healing and transformation and freedom is what Jesus has come to offer, not judgment. Jesus is the way of invitation and relationship, and that is precisely what brings hope and new life to situations that, on the surface of things, seem desperate and hopeless. And once Jesus drives out the demons that had taken hold of this man, once he's sitting there calm and composed and clothed, you'd think everyone would give thanks to Jesus and rejoice that he had brought peace to their town and healing to this man's bedeviled soul. You'd think. But we hear that they were afraid, that they were seized with fear. Now, I get that they were worried about the economic impact of the demons being driven into a herd of pigs who then plunged off a cliff and drowned. Those pigs were their livelihood. And that whole when pigs fly thing, they don't. But the townspeople were seized with fear because snap judgments are awfully hard to undo. Once we shove someone inside a box, as they had done with this man, it's hard to let them back out. It throws the order we've so desperately sought to create into utter chaos. And so the townspeople's response to the man Jesus has healed is to turn away from the man himself and from Jesus. It's much easier to continue to think of this man as dangerous, unclean, and crazy than it is to admit they were wrong, to acknowledge that this man was not actually defined by the demons that possessed him, but by his humanity as one made in the image of God. And it underscores a painful reality about all those snap judgments we're so quick to dole out. We like to identify people who we deem to be less than us because it somehow justifies or elevates our own existence. Every society has people that can't be controlled, people we want to make invisible, people whose mere existence holds up a mirror to our own shortcomings and failures as individuals or as a society. But Jesus won't let us avert our eyes. He says, look at them, love them. Healing may be above our pay grade, but the people in our midst that we want to ignore or turn away or make disappear are beloved children of God, made in God's image. That's what defines them. Not their ailment or illness, not their outward appearance, not their housing situation or financial state, not their immigration status or medical condition, but their God-given humanity. And all of this, being seen and loved by Jesus, is the prerequisite for transformation. Just as Jesus crossed over the sea to encounter this man and make him whole, so has this man's life crossed over to something beyond anyone's imagination. But that's what our relationship with Jesus does for us. It transports us to new places, to a new way of being, to a new way of living. When all seems lost in our lives, Jesus shows us that our current struggles are not the end of the story. That's what it means to be seen and loved and transformed by relationship with Jesus Christ. And it all begins with our baptism, our own personal movement through water, and continues throughout our lives. So this morning we've seen this man's transformation from one who was bound by chains to one who was bound to Jesus. And that's what Jesus wants for you. He wants you to be free, truly free. And this is the power of the loving, liberating God who invites us to both see others and to be seen ourselves by God. That's the radical good news that takes place when Jesus crosses over the Sea of Galilee. And we see that Jesus is willing to cross over anything we may be enduring in our own lives in order to see us, to love us, to greet us, and to transform us. And thanks be to God for that.